Welcome to our Cartne video titled, How Do I Best Encourage, Support, and Protect My Musically Talented Child? Our guest is Daniel Panetta.
Hi, I'm Daniel Panetta. I'm an entertainer, producer, voiceover artist, former child artist, and current touring musician.
So Daniel, tell us a little of your history as a young entertainer. Was it as glamorous as most people think it is?
Okay, well, I remember when, getting into it was a little bit different than the status quo of getting into entertainment. So I fell in love with the idea of oldies and the idea of, that nostalgia factor, even though I didn't quite know why it was necessarily nostalgic to me, but I knew that it gave something to people who listened to it and were watching it. So it started with family, performing for them, and having them sing along. It was funny because I didn't understand how they knew the lyrics as well as I did, because I was studying it. How do they know the lyrics as well as I do? So I kind of got something from that. And then shortly after that, I started doing a lot of impromptu performances. So concerts in the park, at local fairs and stuff like that. People would bring me up on stage, and it always kind of geared towards Elvis tunes because that's really all I was listening to. I was listening to a lot of Elvis, a lot of Beatles, a lot of Buddy Holly, a lot of the Monkees and stuff like that, and watching a lot of Happy Days. It was almost like I was kind of stuck in a bubble, while everybody else was watching things of the 90s that were popular and stuff like that. I was watching things that were like 30, 40 years prior, because my parents liked watching it.
And how old were you?
I was 5. Okay, so I was 5 when I started performing in front of people I didn't know, and I was about to turn 6 when I started getting paid for it. And so with all of those performances, we were kind of, by we I mean my family and I, we were kind of able to narrow down the biggest draw. The shtick, so to speak, was the Elvis stuff. Was really what got people's attention. It was really easy to perform because Elvis was such a great entertainer. So like you do any of his mimicry or do any of his moves that he did on stage, it was bound to get some sort of response. So I got into tribute shows really, really early on. By the time I was 6, I was getting suits and jumpsuits and stuff like that, and get to what it was to go to a shop to get performance attire. It's basically like walking into a costume store for Halloween, but all year round. So having to do that for a while, and then testing hair product. I remember being, really, really young, and going through. I wasn't allowed to dye my hair. I wasn't allowed to do anything crazy with my hair that all the kids were doing of the time. Everybody with spiky hair and whatnot. I always had like some sort of slick hair kind of thing in elementary school and stuff like that. So I was made fun of quite a bit. Just that alone was enough to get made fun of for having different hair, and pasted on. I used to grow the sides of my hair here a little bit longer at the side of my ear to emulate sideburns, so that way I didn't have to draw them on. We can just kind of like hairspray them to my face. So I did that for a while, and then if I had shows after school, or like I'd have to leave at lunchtime for a show, I'd have my hair pre-done, so like I'd have to go to school like that, and it was different. So it wasn't for a little bit until the Elvis stuff started being exclusive, but I was throwing in a lot of Dean Martin, and my grandparents and my mom especially really loved Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis and their movies, so we would watch a lot of those. So I would do like a Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis back and forth, especially for my grandmother, who absolutely loved that, and I still do it for her every so often. I'll throw a Jerry Lewis voice and face kind of thing, and she'll laugh. It's awesome. So I threw that into the show quite a bit, and I just like, it was funny. It was just kind of miming and copying what they were doing on those old, and YouTube wasn't a thing yet, so all those cassettes that I remember watching of these great entertainers and how easy it was for them. So in that aspect, it was glamorous for me, because the prep work was glamorous. It really was, like doing the prep work and these stories that I'm talking about and telling. They were as glamorous as they sound. So the prep, the attire, the shopping, and all that stuff. And we didn't have a lot of money when I was coming up, so like a lot of it, we had friends that would sponsor my attire for certain shows, or sponsor the logistics to get to certain competitions. Like it was really like one of those things of it takes a village to raise a child. This was it takes a village to raise a child performer, because you have so many different people playing parent, if parents can't really be there, or they're working, or they have to be somewhere else in the venue. Then you have somebody else, a family friend or something like that would watch over you when the chaos would start. And the chaos started pretty early. I was about 8 years old when I had my first swarming, so that was pretty nuts.
So what kinds of gigs were you doing?
By that point, I was doing a lot of banquet halls. I'd say, yeah, by the time I was 8, I was comfortable performing in for dinner crowds. So what Vegas used to do at like International Hotel and stuff like that in the MGM for the roasts and stuff, people would be at their tables and I'd be, on a stage or weaving through the dance floor, just entertaining people. Soft seat theaters came shortly after, so I didn't really get the opportunity to do the whole shopping mall thing. That actually came later on. I think it was about 11 or 12 when I started doing shopping malls and stuff like that, and helping people promote their businesses by having entertainment in the shopping mall. I'd done that a few times when I was a kid. Yeah, and then county fairs and festivals and town fairs. I remember very vividly going to like town to town within our within our jurisdiction. It was basically like there was Vaughan, which was the big collaboration of different smaller towns, and then so I would go through all these small towns in Vaughan and have to claim that I was from those towns, in order to get people to like cheer me on a little bit harder and stuff like that. So little white lies here and there just to get get the audience. But I didn't like talking to crowds very much. I wasn't very good with stage banter or anything like that. A lot of it was very rehearsed or just kind of like regurgitated Elvis-isms that I saw him do in his tapes. So I didn't really have my own thoughts at the time. Like it was very much all shtick. So yeah, it was from about 5 to 7.5 was a pretty decent grind, and then getting into vocal training and starting to do it properly, because we had a bit of a scare as well with my voice, kept losing it and stuff like that. Found out I had nodes, which are calluses on the voice box, so I had to go 9 months without singing. I had to go 9 months without speaking loudly, never mind singing. So that was tough. And then immediately after those 9 months, I joined a competition with Elvis's version of Unchained Melody and won 2 competitions with that song. And then I decided to stop doing Elvis stuff and start, pursuing different genres of music. So 12, I retired.
When did you start going on the road?
It was among those years. So the 7, 8, 9 was a lot of traveling. Within Canada, I'm Canadian, so, Canada's really big, so like you can travel 16 hours and still be in the same province, you know. So it's you can travel 3 hours and still be in your driveway. Which there was a lot of traveling within the borders of our province, right at an early age. We never really wanted to go too far away from home, or too far, I should say. But shortly after I turned, I think it was 9 or 10. I remember having a birthday and then immediately having to like get on a plane because we were going out of province for a show for the first time. And do not ask me where that was because I can't remember. It was a very long time ago.
What are some of the places you've performed in?
Well, by the time I was 18, I'd been to 62 countries. So I've been to the Middle East. I'd been to the States. That's international for me. I know, it's weird. I'd been all over Canada. I'd been to Europe. I'd been to Africa. I'd been to Australia. I've been to France. Been to Greece. Yeah, I wish I can count 62 countries. I didn't really see a lot of them. So like I've seen, you see the stage, you see backstage, you see the hotel, and you see the strip of the airport, and that's pretty much the extent of what you see.
What would you say are some of the highlights of your young career?
I think there was looking back on it now, if you had asked me when I was a kid, it was obviously the rush of, being a performer, not being in school, going shopping and meeting different musicians, learning things on the road about music, about life. Now looking back as an adult, I think the highlight for me was getting to know my family under pressure. You really know a person when they're under pressure. My parents did not know a thing about the industry I was getting into, but they had such poise about them. Now I know how much they were freaking out. And I can't even imagine. I can't imagine what they were going through, not only while it was going on, but like while I was sleeping, the conversations they must have had, or arguments that must have been going on just for the betterment of some sort of quality of life for a kid. I would have to say, looking back, the highlight was getting to know my family under pressure, and how much I respect them for that, and didn't put it back on me to carry. We talk about it a lot now. I see my parents all the time. We live just a couple towns away from each other, and we talk about it a lot. My mom gets emotional because those memories are still they feel very recent for her. Because for a long time she had to be this strong, everything's going to be okay, and she's still letting go of those things to be able to talk to her adult child performer son. So it's been really, the last few years have been really eye-opening to what my profession did for and to a lot of people. It's very, very eye-opening early adulthood. That's for sure.
Of course, not every child is going to have the same experience that you did, but this is still really valuable information for parents with talented young kids.
Sure. Especially now. Now it's a lot different now, Back then, I mean, you were looking in the back of papers or looking for the right phone number to call in the yellow pages, or the phone book or something. you were cold calling a lot back then, just to get your foot in the door somewhere, calling a lot of radio stations, calling a lot of, whoever was putting on a competition just to get your name out there. There was no social media. There was nothing. Whereas now you can do a lot of your own research to find out what the best avenue for you is, be it an agent or a manager or a competition or whatever, even just somewhere to perform. A venue. A lot of times they'll be hosting these events, and they can slide you in. You just got to do a little bit of research. So with a little bit of legwork now, that would have taken like months back when I started just doing that research. So very daunting stuff. But yeah, I mean, that's if there's any message with all of this, is that parents of child performers is you're not crazy, or don't think you're crazy for feeling vulnerable around your kid. Don't have important conversations. They're a little bit more adult minded than you think, and it'll lessen the load for you, and it'll open the eyes of your kid a little bit to, our heads aren't in the clouds. We know that there's something going on, and if anything, that's going to play in the back of our minds more than the information we need to know. So, maybe don't like bore them down with like particulars of like the exhaustion or anything like that, because chances are they might be feeling that too. But maybe just have a conversation with like of the how you feeling, and go a little bit beyond that, and talk about how you're feeling too, and like have a conversation with your kid, have that relationship, because whether it's 5 years or 10 years from that moment, you might not be able to have those conversations anymore. Somebody who's less invested in the emotional and mental state of your kid is going to be having those conversations for you. So have them as much as you can now, so they can know what to look for later.
Did your parents travel on the road with you?
At least one of them was at all times. A lot of the times it would be my dad. My mom was a fairly new driver when I was starting out, so she couldn't do the long hauls with me. But my dad was around a lot. I don't know how. This is another one of those things that I think about now as an adult. Is like, how did he get so much time off work? I don't know how taxing that was on his career, or how penalizing it was for his vacation time, but he did it. And both my parents, my brother was really into sports, so if I had a performance and my brother had a sporting event or a game or a tournament or something like that, one parent would be at each. And I remember vividly going doing a competition, Celebration of the Arts, when I was 13 or something like that. And we finished, it was probably around 9, and my brother was at a football game. I think it was a tourney or something like that going on. And I showed up in full suit to the football field, and cheering my brother on in my suit, and like jumping on the fence and like shaking it, cheering for my brother. But we'd always meet up as a family afterwards, whether it be like a fast food joint or a diner or something like that, or at one of our events if it was running a little bit later.
Were there low points in your young career? Did you personally feel the pressure that comes with competitions, big performances, etc.?
Yeah, I think I put a lot of that on myself. I knew the stakes weren't, $1 million deals or anything like that. And I was very aware that, this wasn't going to make or break me, but I was also very aware that this may be the stepping stone to that point. So I was very nervous all the time. I'd have bouts of not eating. I'd have bouts of not sleeping. And we're talking, this is before I got to double-digit ages. Nerves hit me differently. I was always a different kind of kid. So I Yeah, the low points I can't really pinpoint as a kid anyway. I can't really pinpoint specific times. I can pinpoint feelings though, and there was a lot of moments where well, let's put it this way. I don't remember the whole age of 11. There's something blocking it in my brain. I don't remember it at all. So like I can talk about up until I was 10, and then when I came back from having nodes in April of when I was 12, but everything before that is I just don't remember. And I think that I had a little bit of what people would call a mental breakdown. I'm not sure, but because I honestly don't remember. And to be honest, my parents and I don't really talk about that era of time, just because I wasn't sleeping a lot, and it wasn't because I was being forced to do anything. I didn't have representation at the time or anything like that. It was just like I was so hungry to do something and to entertain, and entertainment sort of became my childhood. That was the transition point, I think. That's probably why I'm having a hard time remembering, because I was no longer just a child. I was now a professional child entertainer. And I just remember there was a switch, like somebody flicked a switch, and I no longer had an identity of, oh, that's Daniel, he's whatever. I can't even think of anything because I didn't have anything. All I had was entertaining. I had I had one competition, so I had a trust kind of building of prize money and stuff like that. So possession wise, that's pretty much all I had, and the clothes on my back, and this hunger to entertain. So I there was a switch at a certain point where I no longer was an identifiable kid. I was that's the singer. that's what I was. And I'll tell you the honest truth, it wasn't until my 20s when I figured out who I was.
Was there a rivalry or some form of jealousy between you and your brother?
No, my brother was the only one that treated me like a kid. My brother and I had a very up and down relationship during those times. Not because of resentment or anything. My brother, in his weird way, in his macho alpha kind of way, was the only one keeping my feet on the ground. And my brother has 4 kids now, and I talk with him a heck of a lot, and I thank him now for what he did for me back then. He'd hear me practicing, and he'd hear my voice crack, and he'd go, ah! he kept my feet on the ground. We had real kid serious conversations and at those times about things that brothers or peers of that time should have, about girls, about cars, about school, about homework, and whatever. He was the only one I can talk about that stuff with, because any other time I was out of my house, or I was on the front porch, or I'd left the front door, I was in performance mode.